Celebrities. From hilarious crash outs to self-inflicted career-ending decisions, it's not just the movies they star in that keep us entertained. Welcome to another volume of When Celebrities Self-Destruct, my favorite video series I've ever done, because painting portraits of various personal implosions is right up my alley. Today's episode features a few people I can't believe I'm just now getting to. From an Oscar winner to a recent Emmy recipient, you'd think resumes like that would be safe from career harm. But I'm here to explain to you, it's absolutely not. Let's dig in for the prime candidate for career Mary suicide. Brie Larson. Brie Larson once looked like Hollywood's golden child, the indie darling who went from obscure A24 dramas to the face of Disney's biggest cash cow. An Oscar on the shelf, Marvel contracts in hand, prestige cred from films like Room, all the ingredients were there for a career that should have made her untouchable. But somewhere along the way, her career hilariously face-planted on pavement, worse than poor Haley here.
Let's go check it out.
Brie's career isn't the story of someone aging out of Hollywood gracefully. This is someone who got handed the keys to the kingdom, decided the peasants were beneath her, and then acted shocked when the peasants stopped showing up. This lady belly flopped into irrelevance like a fat kid at a community pool. Back in the mid-2010s, Brie Larson was every studio exec's dream. Young, talented, and packaged as the relatable girl next door who just so happened to have serious acting chops. Oh, and these things. Short Term 12 made critics gush like a corn star. Room sealed the deal, and the Academy handed her Best Actress in 2016 like she was the second coming of Meryl Streep. But was she?
Absolutely fucking not.
She wasn't even the second coming of Hilary Swank, unless you mean Hilary Swank at the end of $1 Million Baby. If you know, you know. But Hollywood, desperate for its next Jennifer Lawrence, yuck, latched onto Brie like she was the future, and for a moment they were able to sell the illusion. For a short time, Larson aura-farmed authenticity, the old indie queen who made it big story arc. Then, of course, Marvel came calling and the machine swallowed her whole like your mom on a Friday night. 2019 should have been her coronation. Captain Marvel wasn't just another superhero flick, it was Disney's billion-dollar attempt at manufacturing a feminist icon. She wasn't just marketed as an Avenger, she was marketed as the Avenger. The face of the brand, the strongest hero, the role model little girls were supposed to plaster on their bedroom walls. You know, perfect for a fucking boy brand. All Brie had to do was keep it light, keep it fun, and pretend she actually liked the fanbase that was about to make her rich. But we all know how that turned out, and if you don't, allow me to enlighten you. She didn't sit back and let the money roll in. Instead, she decided to go full lecture circuit. She turned the press tour into a one-woman campaign for empowerment, constantly reminding everyone that Captain Marvel wasn't just a superhero movie, it was a cultural moment.
Ah, fuck you!
She positioned herself like she was leading a revolution instead of promoting a popcorn flick. And the way she talked about it, you'd think the audience owed her gratitude for showing up. When critics pushed back even slightly, she acted like she was under siege. Like the entire internet was a personal attack. Shit, it even spawned the meme.
Is that like a personal attack or something?
The fans didn't feel included in this moment. They felt like they were being scolded. Marvel fans are used to actors who embrace the circus. Robert Downey Jr. hams it up. Chris Hemsworth cracks jokes. Paul Rudd charms the pants off everyone. But Brie Larson, she sat there with a stone face, talked about how tired she was of hearing from white male critics, and treated the fanbase like a nuisance. She basically spawned this now classic 180-degree double headline. She didn't sell excitement, no, she sold resentment. Every interview, every soundbite, every smug declaration of how important her role was came off less like celebration and more like condescension. And if you were one of those Marvel fans who just wanted to see some superhero banter and explosions, you were treated like part of the problem. By the time the movie hit theaters, the hype wasn't about seeing her save the galaxy. It was about whether audiences would even tolerate her. And while Captain Marvel made money, the love wasn't there. Nobody left the theater buzzing about how Brie Larson was Captain Marvel. They shit on the movie, like how Goose the Cat turned Nick Fury's backstory into a joke. Or talked trash about how bad the CGI on Samuel L. Jackson's de-aged face was. Literally everything else was talked about besides how this movie was a cultural moment, because it wasn't. Disney had poured its empty corporate soul into presenting Brie as the MCU's feminist savior, and the fanbase responded with a collective shrug. Worse, a chunk of them actively resented her for turning their hobby into a political battlefield. Yes, it all started here. She didn't build goodwill with the people who would have carried her career for the next decade. She alienated them before the franchise even had time to grow. And instead of regrouping, Brie doubled down. Did she try to win the audience back? Fuck no. Instead, she launched a YouTube channel because Hollywood A-listers always pivot to being a lifestyle influencer. The pitch was obvious. See guys, I'm just like you. I hang out in sweatpants, I play video games, I eat snacks, I'm totally relatable. Except she wasn't relatable. She was a millionaire actress pretending to discover Nintendo Switch like it wasn't a console that millions of kids already had under their Christmas tree. Every video felt like watching your rich boss's kid try to slum it on TikTok with $100 bills in their back pocket. Her channel was corporate cringe turned up to 11, relatable vlogs where she casually flexed her mansion, her Apple sponsorships, her brand deals, all while trying to convince people she was just like them. It was like watching Gwyneth Paltrow try to unbox a loot crate. YouTubers grind daily uploads and bleed personality into every frame. Brie's channel felt like a marketing intern handed her a script that said, "Be quirky, but in a way that still makes Apple happy." Instead of looking approachable, she looked like an alien trying to mimic human behavior. And, just like with Marvel, she managed to piss off the people she needed most. YouTubers and their fans smelled the inauthenticity a mile away. Here was an Oscar winner parachuting into their world, treating it like a PR stunt and expecting everyone to clap. Actual creators hustle for years to build audiences. Brie thought she could flip on a webcam, smile a little, and collect another fandom. The response was, of course, predictable. Low views, endless snark, and a reputation for being out of touch. And unsurprisingly, nobody gave a damn. The channel limped along, coughed up a few half-hearted collabs, and then quietly died. Nothing says career in trouble quite like going from the Avengers to begging for subscribers like a Minecraft streamer. After Captain Marvel, Larson should have been everywhere. It was supposed to be her moment. She should have gotten Tarantino scripts, Netflix deals, an HBO miniseries. But instead, her phone stopped ringing. The only major gig she landed was a forgettable cameo in Fast X. And only because Vin Diesel collects random celebrities like Pokemon cards. Then came her clowning, clown-maxing achievement, The Marvels. The movie that bombed so hard it should have been studied at FEMA. $270 million right down the drain. And Brie Larson's face was front and center on the wreckage. The only people celebrating were the fans who didn't show up, because fuck that movie, for real. They celebrated like Dracula Flow.
One thing about me, I only fucking fluorescent lighting. I need to see absolutely everything.
This is where the damage she did early on came back to haunt her. The Marvels didn't flop just because audiences were tired of the MCU. It flopped because audiences had no affection for the person fronting it. Years earlier, she told the fanbase how important she was, how this was her crusade, how criticism meant you didn't get it. By the time the sequel rolled around, Marvel fans weren't invested in the character at all, and they were exhausted by her lectures. People skipped the movie, not because they hated Carol Danvers as a concept, but because they didn't want to sit through 2 hours of Brie Larson's self-importance in spandex. She salted her own earth, and when Marvel needed her to deliver, nothing grew. And you know what? Besides the hate train for her, Brie Larson's biggest issue isn't her acting, which hilariously only ranges from solid to, is she sedated? The real issue here is charisma. She has none. Emma Stone oozes charm. Florence Pugh, charismatic firecracker. Even Margot Robbie can sell a bad line with a wink. But Brie lectures you. She scolds you. She talks at you, not with you. Watching her interviews feels like detention with the asshole substitute teacher. And when she tries to be funny, the energy is less laughter and more clapter. Hollywood loves bankable personalities, people who light up late night shows, who make you want to see them on screen. But Brie Larson radiates the energy of a DMV clerk on a double shift. And when Marvel's safety net finally collapsed, there was nothing left to hold her up. So where does she go from here? Indie redemption arc? It might be too late. Florence Pugh already ate that lane for breakfast. Another blockbuster franchise, perhaps? Fat fucking chance. Studios would rather light money on fire than hand her another tentpole. What about prestige television? Maybe, but that requires long-term charisma. Not someone who feels like the Ben Stein of interviewees every time she opens her mouth. Most likely, Brie drifts into irrelevance. A supporting role here, a miniseries there. Maybe a nostalgic Where Are They Now headline in 10 years. She'll always have the Oscar, but an Oscar only gets you so far when audiences roll their eyes at your name on the poster. It's like winning prom queen in 2008. It doesn't pay rent in 2025. Brie Larson had every advantage. Talent, awards, money, Marvel's billion-dollar machine behind her, and she still managed to fucking blow it. She didn't just stumble into bad luck, she actively chased her own audience away. Marvel handed her a billion-dollar stage and she used it to sneer at the crowd. And when they stopped clapping, she looked confused. Well, that's not bad luck, my friends, that's bad judgment. Ultimately, she'll probably try to reinvent herself again. Maybe she'll launch a podcast about empowerment that gets 30 listeners. Or a wellness brand that sells overpriced candles nobody buys. I mean, Gwyneth Paltrow sold that pussy candle after all. Maybe she'll shock the world with a gritty indie comeback that premieres at Sundance. and disappears from theaters faster than a bowl of guac at a Super Bowl party. The truth is, the audience already made their choice. They don't want another TED Talk lecture. They don't want another self-serious press tour. They don't want Brie Larson. Disney could spend another billion trying to make her happen, but she's not happening. Not now, not ever. When the cat in your own movie has more staying power than you, the credits have already rolled under your career, and no post-credit scene is bringing you back. And before we move on to our next celebrity crash out, a quick word about the sponsor of this video. And as always, my friends, I timestamp these motherfuckers for your convenience, so you don't have to watch them if you don't want to. But if you do, you know I love you, baby. The only thing worse than being sick is the Olympic-level effort of trying to book a doctor's appointment. The hold music alone is a pre-existing condition. I was desperate for a new doctor. My old one's only available appointment was in 2027, and that's not an exaggeration, by the way. I needed someone in-network near my house with an opening before sometime this next century. Have you ever been in the same situation? Well, my friend, let me introduce you to ZocDoc. It's a free website where you can easily search and compare high-quality in-network doctors. Thanks to ZocDoc for sponsoring this video. Whether you're looking for someone in-network, nearby, or with a specific appointment time like before my will to live depletes, ZocDoc does the heavy lifting. No guesswork and absolutely zero phone calls where you have to spell your last name 6 times. Plus, with tons of verified patient reviews, you get the inside scoop. Know if the doctor is a great listener or if the waiting room still has magazines from the Bush administration. The first one. And the best part? You can see the doctor's actual real-time appointment openings. See a time? Click it. Book it. It's simple. ZocDoc is also stupid fast. No waiting weeks for an appointment that you needed in days. Appointments typically happen within just 24 to 72 hours of booking. You can even snag some same-day appointments. Stop treating Call the Doctor like a daunting quest like I have to. Visit ZocDoc.com/moviecynic and book your appointment in about 30 seconds. Your time and your eardrums. Well, thank you. And now back to it, baby. Seth Rogen. Wait, how did Seth Rogen end up here? Didn't he just win an Emmy? Indeed, he did, but that doesn't mean he didn't destroy his film career before switching to television. Seth Rogen used to be comedy royalty, the pudgy Canadian stoner with the unmistakable laugh. You know the one. It kind of sounds like this. The guy who looked like your weed dealer but somehow kept headlining $100 million comedies. He was the face of the Judd Apatow era, the lovable slob who always got the girl, always had the weed, and always had a crew of misfits backing him up. For a while, he felt untouchable. He was the guy who brought out bangers like this.
I am truly jealous you got to suck on those tits when you were a baby.
Yeah, well, at least you got to suck on your dad's dick.
Then Hollywood changed. The culture changed. And Seth Rogen, instead of adapting like a pro, decided to bend the knee, apologizing for his own career, and neuter himself into cinematic irrelevance. He might have his name in the producer credits for television now, but his movie career is long gone. The man who once made audiences roar with Superbad and Pineapple Express now makes headlines for apologizing to people who never even watched these movies in the first place. A fall from grace? Hardly. He wanted this. It's self-castration on the Hollywood altar of politics. Back in the 2000s, Seth was the poster child for a new kind of comedy. He wasn't conventionally handsome. He wasn't slick. He was schlubby, perpetually stoned and perpetually broke. Just like half the audience watching him. And that's why we liked him, goddammit. He was like us. Knocked Up made him a household name. Superbad became a cultural landmark. Pineapple Express turned him and James Franco into the new Cheech and Chong, except with more dick jokes. And for a while, it worked beautifully. Rogen's brand was raunchy but human. He could gross you out with a cum joke one second and get you teary-eyed the next with some sweet line about friendship. He tapped into a truth about his generation. That life was messy, stupid, and goddamn hilarious. But then came the self-inflicted backlash. As culture shifted into the 2010s, suddenly the very movies that built his empire were being re-examined through the most joyless lens possible, from a bunch of losers who can't take a fucking joke. The gags that once made people cry laugh are now problematic. And Seth, instead of standing by his work and saying, yeah, comedy's messy, deal with it, he decided to cave. He started apologizing for Superbad, apologizing for Knocked Up, apologizing for every film that gave him a career in the first place, and it was pathetic. Imagine Mel Brooks apologizing for Blazing Saddles. Imagine Eddie Murphy apologizing for Delirious. Imagine George Carlin tweeting a Notes app apology to the Safe Space crowd. Well, in Seth's case, we don't have to imagine, he did it. He became that guy. He treated comedy like a college essay that needed a trigger warning, and once you start apologizing for jokes, the jokes stop being funny.
I think your life is about to become retarded.
Worse, Seth didn't just say he was sorry. He leaned hard into his politics, turning himself into a social media activist first and a comedian second. He spent more time tweeting about Donald Trump than writing punchlines. He became the celebrity equivalent of that guy at the party who corners you in the kitchen to lecture you about climate change while eating your fucking Doritos. And in the process, he alienated the very audience that once filled theaters for his movies. Comedy works when it feels rebellious, when it thumbs its nose at authority. Seth traded rebellion for what he perceived as respectability, and respectability is great, just the opposite of funny. And in his case, as a leading voice in comedy, it's just sad. He went from haha weed is funny to haha fascism is bad. Like, thanks Seth, we really needed you for that groundbreaking revelation. And the projects he worked on went downhill fast. Remember that animated Sausage Party movie? It made money, but aged like milk in the sun. Half the jokes were, isn't it funny that hot dogs look like a dick? It was like a rejected South Park sketch that somehow ran for 90 minutes. But then came the true bombs. Projects so painful they practically erased the goodwill he had left. The crown jewel of his failings was Santa Inc., the holiday comedy so unfunny it became a war crime. Sitting watching this movie felt like Clockwork Orange level torture. Critics hated it, audiences hated it, even people who never watched it hated it. Seth billed it as a biting satire. What he delivered was a claymation hostage video where the ransom note read, "Please clap." Santa Inc. was the kind of show that made you nostalgic for the Star Wars holiday special, but at least the Star Wars one gave us Boba Fett. Santa Inc. gave us nothing except a reminder that Seth Rogen lost the ability to make people laugh. That ha 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 chuckle went from funny to annoying real quick. The numbers told the story. The show was roasted online, drowned in downvotes, and quietly memory hold by HBO like an embarrassing family secret, like Zelda and Pet Sematary.
I had to feed her sometimes. I hated it.
And Seth, instead of owning up, blamed the audience, blamed review bombing, blamed everyone except himself for making garbage. It's like a chef serving you a bowl of diarrhea and then blaming Yelp when you gag. After that string of bombs, Seth started drifting towards prestige television. He produced The Boys, which, to be fair, was a hit. But notice he wasn't the star. He was behind the curtain, cashing checks while edgier actors carried the load. Same with Pam and Tommy. He's rebranded as the producer guy, not the comedy star. And you know why? Because it's safer that way. He doesn't have to risk being funny anymore. He can just slap his name on projects and let other people do the heavy lifting. Seth Rogen went from headlining raunchy blockbusters to being the guy who signs paperwork on the back end. One would hardly consider that growth. Nah, he's hiding. And let's not overlook the bigger picture here. Comedies as a genre are on life support, and Seth Rogen is pulling the plug. When the guy who once defined comedy for a generation starts publicly wringing his hands about how offensive his movies were, it sends a signal. Comedy is dying. He trained audiences to stop expecting laughs and start expecting apologies. No wonder nobody makes big comedies anymore. Nobody wants to spend $50 million making a movie, only to have the star trash it on Twitter 10 years later. Rogen hardly faded with the genre. The dude helped kill it, one apology at a time. He basically became the Undertaker at his own funeral. Except instead of a shovel, he brought a joint and a lecture, like the Brie Larson of male comedy. Today, Seth Rogen is still around, but he's not a movie star. He's not even a comedy star. As mentioned, he's a producer, a background presence, a guy who occasionally pops up in serious projects, so he can remind you that he's more than that annoying laugh. The same laugh, by the way, that once sold out theaters, but now feels like a weapon the CIA would use at Guantanamo. Just like Larson, he had the world at his feet, but decided to actively destroy it. He had a run of hits, a unique voice, and a loyal fan base. And instead of doubling down on what worked, he torched his own house to impress people who were never going to like him anyway. So where does Mr. Chuckles go from here? More producing, more prestige television, more chasing respect from people who still think Superbad is problematic. He'll never headline another Knocked Up or Pineapple Express. He'll never command theaters the way he once did. He traded being funny for being safe, and safe is career death in comedy. Seth Rogen could have been the guy who kept comedy alive, who kept pushing buttons, who kept audiences laughing even when culture got stiff and puritanical. Instead, he apologized, he conformed, and he vanished. The stoner king of comedy went clean and got real fucking boring in the process. So now when you hear that laugh, it doesn't sound like rebellion anymore. It doesn't sound like fun. It sounds like the echo of someone who used to matter. Someone who made us laugh until he got scared of his own shadow. Someone who killed his own genre while begging for applause from people who weren't going to laugh in the first place. And the sad truth is nobody's laughing with Seth anymore. They're laughing at him. And honestly, he wanted it and he earned it. So we come to the part where we try to figure out where the person's career goes from here. Well, he is nominated for a bunch of Emmys, and shit, he even won. And moving forward, he probably keeps hiding in plain sight on television while other people actually take risks. Worst case, we're a year away from Seth Rogen hawking CBD gummies on Instagram, showing up at Comic-Con to do paid photo ops, or lending his voice to a cartoon sloth who smokes weed. Hell, give it 5 years and he'll probably launch a podcast called the Seth Rogen Apology Hour, where every episode is just him saying sorry for a different joke he made in 2025. Because comedy evolves, so surely he'll repent for anything current, since the goalposts will shift and that'll be frowned upon in a decade. That's the real punchline of Seth Rogen's career. The guy who once defined comedy now looks like a parody of himself. And the only thing funnier than that, the fact that he doesn't even realize it.
Shia LaBeouf.
Shia LaBeouf's career has always looked less like a straight line and more like a series of car crashes chained together on a freeway. Granted, he did provide this underutilized meme a few years ago,
Is that why you calling me?
but that only gets you so far. He began as the wisecracking kid on the Disney Channel, the kind of manic energy that could sell even the cheapest sitcom gag. And Hollywood decided to bottle that up and pump it into bigger projects. Holes made him a breakout star. Disturbia showed he could carry a thriller. Spielberg gave him the keys to Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And Michael Bay turned him into the face of Transformers.
I'm coming.
For a few years, studios treated him as a generational star in training, the sort of actor you groom for decades of box office success. But the kid who once won an Emmy for Even Stevens quickly turned into a headline machine, and not the flattering kind. Public drunkenness, DUIs, fistfights, disturbing the peace. His mugshot collection grew faster than his resume. Audiences weren't reading about new roles anymore, they were reading about his latest arrest outside a bar. The early write-ups painted him as troubled or misunderstood, but by the 5th or 6th incident, the act wore thin. And the phrase LaBeouf arrested started to sound like a scheduled weekly column. When the arrests stopped being shocking, the plagiarism scandals kept his name in circulation. Short films he claimed to have created turned out to be lifted from other people's work. And when caught, he responded with bizarre antics instead of remorse. Fake apologies, copied word for word from random sources, rambling tweets, and that infamous paper bag stunt on the red carpet that read, "I am not famous anymore." Shia tried to frame these meltdowns as commentary on fame, but what they revealed was a performer who couldn't handle criticism without staging a tantrum for everyone to watch. The "I'm not famous anymore" bag became less of a statement and more of a prophecy, because the industry was already losing patience. And then came the so-called art projects, a stretch of self-indulgence where Shia seemed determined to prove that he wasn't just an actor but a one-man gallery exhibit. He sat in silence for hours while strangers filed in to confront him. He streamed himself watching all of his films back to back while cameras captured every reaction. He filmed a motivational rant that devolved into the "just do it" meme that ate the internet alive.
So just do it! Make your dreams come true!
None of it looked genius. It looked like a man terrified of being irrelevant who would throw any stunt at the wall to keep people talking. Or it was just a straight up fucking meltdown. The irony is that even as his public life turned into performance art parody, his actual acting chops were undeniable. When he chose to work, he delivered. Fury showed him as a raw, committed force, even when stories leaked that he pulled out his own tooth and cut his face open to stay in character. The Peanut Butter Falcon was heartwarming and crowd-pleasing. Honey Boy, which he wrote and starred in, had critics tripping over themselves to praise his self-lacerating honesty. For brief stretches, it looked like he had found redemption, that the chaos had finally burned itself out and left behind an artist who could channel his demons into worthwhile work. But Shia never lets a good comeback last. In 2020, Twigs sued him for sexual battery, assault, and emotional abuse, and her allegations were grotesque. Violent outbursts, constant control, knowingly giving her an STD. Other women soon spoke up with their own stories, and whatever sympathy he had rebuilt collapsed instantly. This wasn't eccentricity, this wasn't method acting taken too far, this was abuse. And even Hollywood, famous for shielding damaged but bankable talent, had no appetite to cover for him anymore. Netflix pulled him from the awards push for Piece of a Woman. Olivia Wilde fired him from Don't Worry Darling, and the industry quietly filed him under Do Not Call. Fans who had stuck with him through the earlier chaos were finally done. Shia's cycle was painfully predictable. A strong performance, a round of glowing interviews about recovery and self-improvement, then another scandal or meltdown that erased all the goodwill. Audiences stopped waiting for redemption because they knew it wouldn't last. Supporting Shia felt like playing Russian roulette with 6 loaded chambers. You weren't betting if he would screw up again, only when. And that's what makes him so frustrating, because LaBeouf is talented, more talented than many of the safer, blander actors Hollywood pushes forward. He has presence, intensity, and charisma that can't be faked. When he's focused, he's electric on screen. But talent without discipline doesn't build a career, it destroys one. Shia confused chaos with depth and breakdowns with bravery, and the industry grew tired of waiting for him to grow out of it. Today, Shia is selling repentance. He speaks openly about sobriety, about therapy, about faith. He converted to Catholicism while preparing for a role, and now gives interviews about spiritual rebirth. Maybe he means it, maybe it's genuine, or maybe it's just the latest mask in a career defined by reinvention. Child star, blockbuster lead, plagiarist, art clown, abuser, Catholic. Audiences have seen too many identities to take the next one at face value. The truth is that Hollywood isn't eager to give him another shot. Robert Downey Jr. rebuilt his career because people wanted to see him succeed. Shia doesn't inspire that kind of loyalty. Too many headlines, too many victims, too many wasted chances. He's not seen as a bankable wild card anymore. He's seen as a hazard. The same studios that once marketed him as the future now treat him like a walking liability they can't afford to gamble on. So where does that leave him? Maybe he finds work in small indies where controversy doubles as marketing. Maybe he leans into religious dramas, cashing in on his redemption. Maybe streaming platforms throw him the occasional bone for name recognition alone. But the tentpole era is over. The blockbuster days are gone. And the idea of him headlining another franchise is laughable. Nobody hands a ticking time bomb the keys to $1 billion set. And that's his legacy. Not the early promise, not the billion-dollar franchises, not even the flashes of brilliance in films like Honey Boy. What sticks is the paper bag, the mugshots, the lawsuits, the endless cycle of collapse. He wanted to be remembered as fearless, maybe even profound. He'll be remembered as a case study in how to waste opportunity after opportunity until no one's left to care. At best, Shia spends the rest of his career on the indie fringe, occasionally reminding people that he can still act when he isn't sabotaging himself. At worst, he's a convention footnote in 10 years, posing for selfies under a banner that says, "Just do it, guy," while fans bring him paper bags to autograph. Either way, the day of Shia LaBeouf as a serious contender for Hollywood's future are over. He had the roles, the platform, the talent, and the audience. He also had the arrogance, the volatility, and the self-destructive streak to burn it all down. And that's exactly what he did. Shia LaBeouf didn't just lose Hollywood, he wore it out, one stunt and one scandal at a time. And if there's one constant in his story, it's that there's always another reinvention waiting in the wings. Maybe he'll open an art exhibit where you pay $50 to sit in a room and watch him apologize through a paper bag. Or maybe he'll just lean into the inevitable and headline a pure flicks movie called Honey Boy 2, Jesus Fix Me. Whatever it ends up being, the punchline is already written. Shia LaBeouf went from the future of Hollywood to the world's most exhausting sideshow, and no amount of paper bags will cover that up.
JT Money.
Justin Timberlake spent years selling the illusion of perfection. He had the boy band pedigree, the smirk, the red carpet dates, the carefully choreographed image of a man who could dance through life without breaking a sweat. He was the kind of celebrity who never seemed to stumble, always polished, always in control. And then the cracks began to spread, slow at first, then wide enough to swallow his reputation whole. His relationship with Britney Spears was the first domino. Back when they were young and tabloid ready, they played America's favorite couple. When it ended, Timberlake turned the breakup into fuel for his own image, milking sympathy while letting her shoulder the chaos. For years, he let the world think of Britney as unstable while he basked in the glow of being the charming survivor. Decades later, when Britney's story was re-examined, the spotlight shifted back on him. All those smirks, all those sly digs, all the publicity wrung out of their split now looks less like heartbreak and more like opportunism. Then came Janet Jackson. One of the biggest names in music stood beside him on a stage in front of the world, and when the infamous Super Bowl moment blew up, Timberlake ducked for cover while Janet bore the fire. She lost radio play, she lost momentum, she became a cautionary headline for a decade. He carried on smiling for cameras, pretending he had nothing to answer for. When that history resurfaced, people finally noticed how neatly he had escaped while she burned. The shine dulled further as Timberlake aged into a phase of life that requires substance over image, and he didn't have much to offer. Rumors of hard partying and drug use had always circled in the background, the kind of whispers publicists swat away when a star is still golden. But the whispers grew louder, and the evidence harder to ignore. He began to look less like the smooth, unflappable showman, and more like a man fraying at the edges. And that mugshot sealed it. Holy shit. There it was, Justin Timberlake, arrested for driving while intoxicated, staring into the police camera with the glassy-eyed look of a man who lost control. No stage lights, no stylists, no carefully arranged PR curtain. Just another celebrity who couldn't keep himself together. That single image did what no bad press could ever do. It stripped away 2 decades of polish in one instant. People didn't mourn it, they mocked it. The memes spread faster than any new project he's tried to push in the last decade. The man who once sold coolness as a lifestyle now looked like another aging star who couldn't handle his own vices. And that photo wasn't a fluke. It fit too neatly into the narrative already building around him. The shaky public appearances, the hollow apologies to Britney and Janet that came decades too late and that nobody asked for, reeking of PR panic instead of sincerity. The strained interviews where the smile looked more like a mask than an expression. The desperate attempts to recapture relevance through nostalgia reunions and half-hearted media blitzes. All of it pointed to a man struggling to keep the image alive while everyone else has already moved on. So Timberlake no longer commands admiration, he attracts curiosity of the worst kind. The rubbernecking interest in whether the next headline will be another stumble. I mean, shit, that's what I'm doing right now. People don't share his name because of new music or acting gigs. They share it because of mugshots, rumors, and awkward clips that spread like wildfire online. His relevance isn't tied to creativity anymore, it's tied to spectacle. And the spectacle feels increasingly bleak. The man who once embodied confidence now carries himself like someone waiting for the next blow to land. Every public appearance looks like a test. Will he charm the room, or will he add another clip to the growing pile of evidence that he's unraveling? The tension isn't about what he'll do next in his career. It's about what mistake will make the rounds online by morning. The whispers only reinforce the image. Stories of drinking too much, dabbling too hard, staying out too late. In his prime, these were brushed off as the lifestyle of a young star. Now they stick because they fit the man he's become. An aging performer struggling to hold together the facade. A man whose clean-cut act collapsed years ago, leaving behind a collection of rumors that sound less like exaggerations and more like inevitabilities. Timberlake's brand used to be control. Now his brand is fragility. He doesn't look like someone who owns the spotlight anymore. He looks like someone terrified of losing it. The apologies don't land, the comebacks don't catch. The attempts at reinvention are met with shrugs at best and laughter at worst. He isn't dictating the conversation, he's reacting to it, scrambling to fix damage that never stops spreading. The man who once strutted through pop culture like it was his playground now shuffles through it like a man being chased out of a party he used to host. His biggest moments of the last few years haven't been artistic triumphs or cultural dominance. They've been a mugshot, a resurfaced scandal, a round of memes that turned his name into a punchline. And that's not momentum, that's slow collapse playing out in real time. So what comes next? More apologies, more image rehab, more attempts to claw back sympathy from a public that doesn't care anymore. Maybe a residency in Vegas. That can always help a drug problem. Maybe another reunion tour where nostalgia does the heavy lifting. Maybe another half-baked reinvention with a new haircut and a slogan about authenticity. None of it will land because the illusion of Timberlake as untouchable is gone. Once the curtain rips, you can't tape it back together. That's gone, replaced by gossip and the uncomfortable spectacle of watching a man who doesn't know how to age out of his own mythology. The boy band Golden Boy turned pop prince turned Hollywood insider is now just another name people joke about online. Another reminder that fame doesn't protect you from looking like a mess when the mask finally slips. The next chapter of his story probably won't be about music or film or cultural relevance. It'll be about how far the unraveling goes and how long it takes before Timberlake stops pretending he's still in command of the room. Because the world isn't waiting for his next single. The world is waiting for the next headline. And that'll do it for another volume of When Celebrities Self-Destruct. I'm always having a blast doing these, so if you guys have some suggestions for portraits you'd like to see of career implosions, please drop them in the comments. Also, huge shout out to everyone who's supporting me over on Patreon. You can see them on the screen here. I drop exclusive reviews and video essays that are only for Patreon subscribers, so if you're interested, feel free to check that out. And get your name in the video. Till next time, GG's.